Special technology if the whistleblower will testify. What has them so afraid? Plus, the president's closest allies turning on Trump after a controversial new decision that could affect American security. How is the president responding to them tonight? And new concerns about the damage Trump's attacks are having on Joe Biden. How is Joe Biden responding to him? Let's go out front. Good evening. I'm Erin Burnett. Out front tonight, the breaking news going to the extreme. Sources telling CNN Democrats are preparing to take drastic and unprecedented steps in order to protect the identity of the whistleblower if he or she testifies. Though let's not forget, President Trump has said he wants to know the whistleblower's identity. He has called the person a traitor, suggesting that he or she should be executed. This as Democrats are widening their impeachment investigation. Subpoenas going to more people around the president tonight. Trump today, defiant, saying he's not afraid.
It's lucky that I'm the president because I guess, I don't know what, a lot of people said very few people could handle it. I sort of thrive on it. You know why? Because it's so important that we get to the bottom.
He's talking about getting to the bottom of the investigation itself. Well, Trump is not the only one who wants to get to the bottom of it. It depends how you define it, right? Democrats, they do too. Their inquiry now touching just about every part of the American government, from the White House to the State Department to, as of today, the Pentagon and the Office of Management and Budget. Democrats just firing off new subpoenas targeting the president's defense secretary and budget chief, demanding documents about his conversations with Ukraine and about the hundreds of millions of dollars that Trump withheld in military aid. And the investigation could soon engulf his personal attorney's team. Democrats warning they're going to slap Rudy Giuliani's personal associates with subpoenas if they don't cooperate. They've been defying requests for information. And yet, as the tentacles of this investigation spread tonight, the president refuses to budge in his defense of that damning phone call with Ukraine's president.
The conversation that I had with the Ukrainian president, Zelensky, was a very good it was a very cordial, very good conversation. We had a great conversation. It's a very normal, nice conversation.
Cordial, great, normal, nice. The same call, of course, on which President Trump requested a favor from the Ukraine president. He asked for the favor of an investigation into his political rival, Joe Biden, when the Ukraine president brought up military aid. So tonight, more cracks are starting to appear when it comes to Republican defense of that call. Senator Rob Portman of the crucial state of Ohio, now the fourth Republican to slam President Trump. He tells the Columbus Dispatch, quote, the president should not have raised the Biden issue on that call, period. It's not appropriate for a president to engage a foreign government in an investigation of a political opponent. Portman's slam coming as Senator Susan Collins this weekend told a Maine newspaper that Trump's call for China to investigate Biden is, quote, a big mistake and, quote, completely inappropriate. They joined Senators Romney and Sass in condemning Trump's behavior. Caitlin Collins is out front live outside the White House this hour. And Caitlin, the president just spoke, continuing nonstop defense tonight.
Yeah, Aaron, he's making clear just how aggrieved he is by all of this, saying that he's being unfairly targeted so soon after the Mueller investigation ended, and really turning the attacks around on Democrats, saying that people like House Speaker Nancy Pelosi have committed treason here, he believes, and that they should be impeached, even though, of course, members of Congress cannot be impeached. What you're seeing is essentially this tactic that we've seen the president employ before, which is where he accuses people of what they are accusing him of. That's what we're seeing with the whole Pelosi strategy. And, of course, the president is continuing to ramp up his attacks. As we know, behind the scenes, that sources are telling CNN, there was a call with Republican lawmakers today where they were being briefed by leadership on polling that they basically did through Trump districts, like these areas that voted for President Trump but are now seats that are currently held by Democrats, where they say there is higher opposition to impeachment than there is support for it. Of course, that comes as there's been a lot of CNN polling that has shown actually the number of Americans that are interested in an impeachment inquiry, just people finding out what it was the president did, is rising. So you're seeing this round-the-clock defense coming out of the White House as they're trying to figure out what their strategy is going to be as they're watching just how quickly this is moving on Capitol Hill.
All right, Caitlin, thank you very much. And I want to go to Capitol Hill now. Manu Raju is out front there. And Manu, you have new reporting about those worries on Capitol Hill over the whistleblower safety. And when I said drastic measures, drastic is the appropriate word, right?
Yeah, and it comes amid concerns after the president himself has said that he wanted to know the identity of the whistleblower and also his consistent attacks against the whistleblower's credibility and concerns that some of the president's allies may try to help him by potentially leaking the name of this individual. Now, as a result, behind the scenes, conversations are underway with the House Intelligence Committee and the lawyers for the whistleblower to discuss extreme measures to protect this person's identity. That could include doing something off-site. That could include disguising this individual's voice, do something and allowing staff or just a handful of members to interview this person in a way that they actually would not be able to see the person while they're interviewing them. A range of things that are typically not done here on Capitol Hill, but it's all part of an effort to secure this person's testimony. Now, of course, Aaron, this all comes amid this ramped up investigation with more subpoenas flying and also more depositions happening, including the president's ambassador to the European Union testifying tomorrow. And we've seen text exchanges showing that he was aware of everything that was happening in the aftermath of the president's ask for the Ukrainian president to investigate his political rival Joe Biden. The question is ultimately, how much does he reveal to this committee, and does he shed new light on efforts and concerns that the president sought to withhold the military aid and deny a meeting to the Ukrainian president in exchange for that investigation?
All right, Manu, thank you very much. And obviously, that testimony is going to be crucial when you remember the text exchange. Remember that Envoy Volker produced last week. So that's going to be crucial. You're going to learn a whole lot more about Mr. Sondland later this hour. Out front now, though, I want to go to Democratic Congresswoman Kim Schreier. She flipped her district from red to blue in 2018. I appreciate your time, Congresswoman. And I want to start with what Manu was just reporting. The House Intelligence Committee and lawyers for the whistleblower are talking about extreme, drastic measures to protect this person's identity if they testify because of fear about safety, to try to protect this person from Trump and his allies. Do you really think this is a real concern?
Oh, I think this is absolutely a real concern. I mean, we see all kinds of threats, and I believe most of us have recognized since day one that although being a whistleblower in our country is really fundamental to our democracy, and that the law of the land is that whistleblowers are protected, we have an administration that seems to see things differently. We have a president who has befriended Putin, and we know how whistleblowers would be dealt with in those countries. And so I am absolutely concerned, and I think that every step to protect the whistleblower, him or her, and including some of our members of Congress, is absolutely justified.
So, you know, Manu was going through some of the possibilities, right? You could be disguising the voice or putting a screen up or something to protect the person's identity so that Republicans literally don't actually see the person. And I guess the question I have for you, Congresswoman, is that I feel like if the roles were reversed and the Republicans were going to deny Democrats knowing who the person was, altering the voice, putting them behind a screen or the equivalent thereof technologically, you would be yelling from the rooftops. Are you worried that you're falling into a partisan trap here?
Well, that's a really good question, right? How believable is your witness if your witness is then hiding in every way? Look, I hope that my Republican colleagues would have the sensibility to maintain confidentiality. I believe that these interviews should be done without a camera, and I would like to hope that all of us could rise and understand that this is a matter of patriotism and not a political issue, and that the protection of whistleblowers is fundamental to our democracy. This is not partisan. So
today, Democrats expanded the impeachment probe even further. I was just mentioning new subpoenas, right, to the Pentagon and the Office of Management and Budget. You've already subpoenaed the State Department and the White House, the president's personal attorney. Could be others in his orbit who are also to receive subpoenas. Do you expect any of these agencies to cooperate?
Look, I hope they will. I think that what we are seeing is that people in circles closer to the president are putting up their hands and saying, gosh, enough is enough. This really has gone beyond the pale, and that this is un-American. We have a president who has betrayed the American people, has abused his power for personal and political gain, and threatened our national security in addition to Ukraine's. And I think that the tighter these screws are, the more they will say, you know, I want to be on the right side of history. And standing by and allowing this to happen is setting a precedent for future administrations that will just not be tolerable and that undermine our democracy.
So Republicans were briefed today on impeachment polling that they had, which doesn't jive with all the polls out there, but they're talking specifically about districts that Trump won in 2016, that Democrats won in the midterms. They say that in those districts, impeachment, that people disapproval for impeachment far exceeds support, and obviously that could be very crucial. Now, you flipped your district from blue to red. Obviously, Trump didn't win there. I know it was close, but you did flip it. Are you worried that you could be barking up the wrong tree on impeachment, that you could be handing a victory to the president?
So I think it's an interesting question, but I, again, think that this goes beyond politics, that I did flip this district from red to blue. I'm the first Democrat who has ever represented Washington's 8th District. I'm the only woman doctor in Congress. And I was put here for a couple reasons. One is to take the voices of the people in my district to Congress, and others to fight for health care and bring down the cost of prescription drugs. And another is because that they trusted the judgment of a pediatrician. They knew I would be thoughtful about these matters. I didn't jump to this. What I want is an impeachment inquiry. And I think that polling is really, it depends how you ask a question, right? And I think the question for me right now is, do you support an impeachment inquiry? Meaning, do you support getting to the information, getting to the facts? And I can tell you from my 19 town halls, from my discussions with people all over this district, that the people in Washington's 8th District want the information. They want to be able to make a good decision about who they vote for in 2020.
All right, Congresswoman Schreier, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks, Aaron.
And next, Trump's former lawyer speaking out. What he's accusing Democrats of doing is they are zeroing in on Rudy Giuliani's inner circle. Plus, one of the president's biggest supporters no longer seeing eye to eye with Trump.
I hope I'm making myself clear how short-sighted and irresponsible this decision is, in my view.
So what's behind the split? And would it bleed into the impeachment fight? And a millionaire who, like Trump, made his fortune in construction, now at the center of the impeachment investigation. You heard me, right? So who is he? We'll tell you. Inquiry. Those comments from John Dowd, who is actually now representing 2 associates of Rudy Giuliani, including one who admitted he arranged a call between Giuliani, who was digging for dirt on Trump's rival Joe Biden, and a former Ukrainian prosecutor. This is a source tells CNN that House Democrats are prepared to subpoena these individuals if they refuse to testify and hand over documents. Out front now, former counsel to the U.S. Assistant Attorney General for National Security, Carrie Cordero, and former senior counsel to Ken Starr for the Whitewater investigation, Paul Rosenzweig. So, Paul, let me start with you. The White House has been subpoenaed, Rudy Giuliani, the Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, Office of Management and Budget. It's widening, the Pentagon. And it is clear that the response is stall and delay. So ultimately, who does that help more, Democrats or the president coming into an election year?
Well, I think the president thinks it assists him, but I think in an odd way it's actually going to wind up helping the Democrats in the following way. They're going to make a case that the president is stonewalling everything and refusing to cooperate in any way, manner, shape, or form. So Article 1 of the Articles of Impeachment is going to be about the Ukraine call, and Article 2 is going to be about his obstruction of justice, his perversion of the processes of law, and his refusal to abide by lawful subpoenas from the Congress. So I think he's actually going to short-circuit the process, and this is going to go more quickly than they expect.
Would you agree, Carrie, that could make it go more quickly, even as the whole goal, right, is to slow it down, as Democrats would use the formal word obstruct?
I don't know if it'll go more quickly. I do think that the Democrats that are leading the impeachment inquiry do need to think about focusing the investigation, because they really do have somewhat of a timeline here. The Speaker has said that she wants to try to wrap this up, I think, by the end of the calendar year. We are in a campaign year, and so there are political reasons to try to not meld this into the heightened period of the 2020 campaign. Right. And so if they are on an expedited timeline, I do think it would benefit the impeachment process to focus on the most important witnesses. So, for example, the fact that they quickly, in the House Democrats, that they quickly called the State Department and former State Department representatives who were specifically involved in these conversations, making the deal on behalf of the president with the government of Ukraine. I think those people and the fact they called them quickly is important. But I do think they need to, it would be helpful to them to focus who they're calling for witnesses and what documents they really need. There's a lot of evidence already out there. They don't need a whole lot more.
I mean, I guess that is the question. Paul, the bottom line is I understand that, you just heard the Congresswoman there from a district, right, that had been Republican. She flipped to Democrat. So she's trying to walk the line of I support an inquiry. I want more information. Well, of course, that's what you should do. But it does seem that a lot of people have reached a conclusion of what is right and what is wrong based on the information the entire American public has, which is a transcript of that phone call.
Well, that's right. And it's not just the transcript, of course. It's the telephone calls and text messages that the Ukrainian ambassadors have exchanged. I think with Carrie that the facts are very clear, and I agree with her completely, that the best witnesses here are the ones who are not going to listen to the White House's order to withhold evidence. People like former Ambassador Volker, people like Ambassador Bill Taylor, who I'm sure will respond to any subpoena with alacrity. I think that by working on these two tracks, by sending subpoenas that the White House routinely refuses to honor and taking testimony from people who are willing witnesses, the House can move as quickly as they need to.
So Carrie, just a couple of moments ago, and we don't even yet have this sound in, but the president was just yelled some questions by reporters, and what they were yelling was, did you mean what you said when you called on China to investigate the Bidens, which of course we know he did publicly the other day, right? And he doesn't answer. Another reporter follows up, Mr. President, were you joking when you suggested China look into the Bidens? And he just says, thank you all very much, right? And of course, he had publicly said China should look into the Bidens. Now, the reason the reporters asked those questions, actually, it just came in, so let me play it. Everyone can hear it.
President, were you joking? Out that way. Thank you. China look into the Bidens. Thank you, guys.
Thank you all very much.
No interest in answering it. And Carrie, the reason that's significant is because he said what he said, right? Which is, hey, China, you should be investigating the Bidens. And his defenders, his Republican defenders, who are trying to say that that would be okay, are saying it's okay because he didn't mean it, because he was joking. This is the excuse they provided for him. Here they are.
You watched what the president said. He's not saying China's investigating.
I doubt if the China comment was serious, to tell you the truth.
You really think he was serious about thinking that China's going to investigate the Biden family?
I don't think it's a real request. I think he did it to gig you guys.
So they gave him an out, Carrie. Reporters just asked him, and he did not take that out.
He didn't take it back because he said it. It's such a garbage argument to say, oh, we're supposed to believe some things the president says, but we're not supposed to believe other things. The fact of the matter is that the Mueller report showed that he said, Russia, if you're listening, and then hours later, Russia actually conducted a cyber activity to try to affect the 2016 election. We know that privately on a phone call with the president of Ukraine, he asked for a, quote, favor in the context of a discussion over defense and defense purposes, defense purchases, and security assistance to Ukraine. That was a private conversation that became public. And so now he is trying to say in public what he says in private as well. There's no reason that we shouldn't take what he says seriously, and we can't have somebody who is in the office of the presidency and the commander-in-chief whose words don't mean anything.
All right. Thank you both very much. I appreciate your time. And next, Trump's biggest backers have turned, slamming the president over a hugely controversial decision today. So the big question is, could this break spread to impeachment in the Senate? Breaking news. President Trump responding to Republican outrage over his decision to abandon a U.S. ally and immediately withdraw all U.S. troops from northern Syria.
I fully understand both sides of it, but I campaigned on the fact that I was going to bring our soldiers home. We're not a police force.
Senior Republicans, though, are not buying it. They are not backing their man this time. Here is Senator Lindsey Graham.
This impulsive decision by the president has undone all the gains we've made, thrown the region into further chaos. Iran is licking their chops. And if I'm an ISIS fighter, I've got a second lease on life. So to those who think ISIS has been defeated, you will soon see. I hope I'm making myself clear how short-sighted and irresponsible this decision is, in my view.
Yes, that is the voice of the same Lindsey Graham who has blindly parroted Trump's defense on Ukraine.
This seems to me like a political setup. It's all hearsay. You can't get a parking ticket conviction based on hearsay.
So perhaps Republicans have been looking for a way to take on the president because Lindsey Graham is not alone. Congresswoman Liz Cheney calling Trump's decision, quote, catastrophic. The Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell slamming Trump's troop pullout as, quote, precipitous, saying ISIS is still a dangerous threat. But while the GOP stands against him and Trump's staunch ally Lindsey Graham says Trump's move, quote, ensures ISIS's comeback, Trump is living in a totally different world on this issue. His bottom line?
We defeated ISIS. We did it very quickly, far quicker than any general from here told us we could do it. We had some great people over there. They did it quickly.
Out front now, Patrick Healy, New York Times political editor, Nia Malika Henderson, our senior political reporter, and Colonel Cedric Leighton, former member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and a CNN military analyst. Colonel, obviously, the president and, we just gave you Lindsey Graham. They're diametrically opposed on this issue of ISIS and the troops. Trump's allies are slamming him. They're saying he's wrong on basic facts like that claim to have defeated ISIS. Does it concern you to hear what he's saying?
Oh, absolutely, Aaron. I mean, I think the move was completely ill-considered and, quite frankly, dumb to do this at this time. We spent over 50 years so far in Central Europe, actually more than 70 years in Central Europe after World War II, and that's something that you have to consider. We are there to keep the lid on bad things from happening, and since we haven't done that completely in Syria, this was a very bad time to move. What we're looking at here is the Turkish troops coming in, destroying some of the allies that we've been working with on the Kurdish side, and it's a very, very bad thing to do.
So, Patrick, your reaction when you hear Lindsey Graham? Marco Rubio has also come out. They're coming out forcefully against the president on this move in Syria. Because what I'm pointing out here is this is after days of defending him against impeachment when it came to the Ukraine call. And it seems like they were chomping at the bit to jump in on something.
Yeah, you're right, Aaron. I mean, this really points up how much Lindsey Graham, Marco Rubio, other Republicans see Ukraine and the Joe Biden issue as essentially a partisan political issue that will be fought in the impeachment inquiry, will be fought in the presidential campaign, but that fundamentally this is about Ukraine has been about protecting the president vis-a-vis his voter base and not getting all of those Trump voters angry at them because they're not protecting the president. Whereas with Syria, this goes to how a lot of Republicans from when Trump was a presidential candidate have had concerns about him on foreign policy. They have not liked the fact particularly that he has broken with Republican, at least party establishment orthodoxy that has supported the military interventions that went on in Iraq, went in on Afghanistan, in Syria. I mean, this was a major clash for years between President Trump and John McCain. And so I think in that regard, a lot of these Republicans sort of have never quite felt good about him on foreign policy, use of military force, his desire to bring home troops, and sort of what they see as kind of a geopolitical move that they clearly don't like.
So, Nia, but there are others, really powerful others, who are jumping on board here, right? Removing U.S. troops, is happening as Turkey, led by the authoritarian autocrat, Erdogan is about to invade Syria. Now, he has long wanted to do that, right, to attack the Kurds. He says they're terrorists. They have been long-standing allies of the United States who fought with this country for years. So Trump is now removing the obstacle for Erdogan to go after American allies. And his own former ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, tweeted today, quote, "We must always have the backs of our allies if we expect them to have our back. The Kurds were instrumental in our successful fight against ISIS in Syria. Leaving them to die is a big mistake. Turkey is not our friend." That is her hashtag. It is pretty stunning to see such a clear, aggressive take on of the president, Nia.
It's true. From Nikki Haley, if you recall, Jim Mattis left his post at the Pentagon as the Secretary of Defense over this very issue, withdrawal from Syria, and his notion that is the same thing that Nikki Haley said, that America was abandoning its allies, and you had the president in that instance kind of back down, and here he is finally following through with something that he has long wanted to do. This is as a candidate, he of course talked about this. He felt like America was spread too thin. That allies weren't pitching in, and that American troops shouldn't be the policemen of the world. So here he is finally making good on something that he has long wanted to do. And you see, of course, Republicans remembering that they're Republicans in this notion, remembering that they have been the party of national security. They've been hawks in terms of America's engagement in the world, and this president winning on a very different approach to foreign policy. And you know, he may be more in line with where the country is in terms of foreign policy and engagement in the Middle East.
Perhaps, and right, and indeed he cares, more about that than what experts may tell him. I mean, Colonel, Trump also angry, at talk that Erdogan may have outmaneuvered him, right? Erdogan got what he wanted, and there is Trump, looking like a Trump. So he said this late today.
I have told Turkey that if they do anything outside of what we would think is humane, to use the word a second time, we talk about Hong Kong, we talk about this, they could suffer the wrath of an extremely decimated economy.
The wrath of an extremely decimated economy. Look, we hear him talk about fire and fury with North Korea. He likes to do this, Colonel. He also tweeted today, if Turkey does anything that I, in my great and unmatched wisdom, consider to be off limits, I will totally destroy and obliterate the economy of Turkey. Maybe Republicans would say he was joking with part of that. But, I checked. The U.S. is the 7th biggest trading partner of Turkey, a distant 7th. Does Erdogan take that kind of a threat seriously?
Not really. And, it's a lot harder to do anything against Turkey if you're not in the neighborhood. Yes, we have military bases in Turkey, but they're not going to be helpful in a situation like this. And you won't have any leverage. And this is basically empty rhetoric, and Erdogan knows that.
Nia, what do you make of that? I, in my great and unmatched wisdom, obviously, he wants people to latch on to that.
Yeah, I mean, this is a president who obviously thinks very highly of himself. He's called himself a very stable genius in other respects. And so, yeah, I mean, he believes that he's the person who has the vision. He alone can fix these issues. And he believes he's delivering on a campaign promise as well in a time when he's obviously facing lots of scrutiny about his behavior with Ukraine and also his behavior with calling on China to investigate Joe Biden. So it's a tricky time for him. He's been kind of holding the line with Republicans in terms of them not jumping ship. But on this issue of Syria.
New tonight, a millionaire Trump donor at the center of the Ukraine call. We're hours away from his testimony on Capitol Hill. You see him there. His name is Gordon Sondland. He was the ambassador to the EU. He was named in the whistleblower complaint. His text messages with fellow diplomats were released last week, and they were really at the heart, that shocking text message. Before he was a diplomat, though, he was a GOP donor with a career similar to the president's. Alex Marquardt is out front.
A wealthy donor, given a large but uncontroversial role in the Trump administration, has been thrust into one of the biggest scandals to grip the White House. Gordon Sondland, ambassador to the European Union, is testifying to Congress on Tuesday, now a key player in the impeachment inquiry because of his high-level dealings with Ukraine.
Now, concerning your title, you're the U.S. ambassador to the EU, but you've been spending a great deal of time in Kiev. Why is that?
Well, President Trump has not only honored me with the job of being the U.S. ambassador to the EU, but he's also given me other special assignments, including Ukraine.
Overseeing that relationship meant carrying Trump's message to the Ukrainian president.
I had a wonderful hour-long meeting with President Zelensky that followed on the heels of his telephone call yesterday with President Trump.
Text messages released by the House Intelligence Committee show that Sondland was well aware that for the president, the U.S.-Ukraine relationship was deeply intertwined with the president's desire for Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden and his son. The group messages Sondland is on are full of references to Rudy Giuliani, the president's personal lawyer assigned to pushing a Biden conspiracy theory that has zero supporting evidence. On September 1st, the ambassador to Ukraine asked Sondland if hundreds of millions of dollars in military assistance were conditioned on investigations. Sondland responded, "Call me." A week later, the ambassador told Sondland, "I think it's crazy to withhold security assistance for help with a political campaign." Sondland denied it was, saying President Trump has been crystal clear, no quid pro quos of any kind. The president is trying to evaluate whether Ukraine is truly going to adopt the transparency and reforms. Sondland has ended up in the hot seat in Washington after a career in business, like President Trump, building hotels across the country and making a lot of money.
Thank you.
In the 2016 campaign, the longtime Republican donor first supported Jeb Bush. He slammed Trump for going after the Gold Star Khan family, who lost a son in Iraq. But his tune soon changed. Once the election was over, Sondland donated $1 million to Trump's inauguration and secured his EU ambassadorship. Once there, he linked up with Energy Secretary Rick Perry and now former Special Envoy Kurt Volker in managing the Ukraine relationship, calling themselves the Three Amigos.
And we've been tasked with sort of overseeing the Ukraine-U.S. relationship between our contacts at the highest levels of the U.S. government and now the highest levels of the Ukrainian government.
There is one more part of that trove of text messages that we really need to highlight, a message in which Sondland says he thinks that President Trump really wants what he calls the deliverable. Aaron, that deliverable, which we understand from the other messages, is a public statement from the Ukrainian president that Joe Biden and his son will be investigated. Aaron.
All right. Thank you very much, Alex Marquardt. So that's the